Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into steam, stone, and something far more sinister. You're not a warrior, not a senator, just a regular Roman citizen trying to stay clean, stay civilized, and stay sane. The baths are your sanctuary, your daily rhythm. Warm water, scraped skin, perfumed oils, familiar faces. But what if that steam you breathe is doing more than opening your pores? What if it's melting your mind? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up stiff. Not the kind of stiff that comes from overwork or a night spent curled on a friend's floor after too much cheap wine, but a stiffness from inside. Your joints feel like clay, cracked and barely holding shape. You stretch, and your spine answers with a crunch. The birds are already singing outside, though one of them sounds more like a pipe hissing than anything avian. You ignore it. Habit carries you forward. You rise, dress, cinch your belt, and wrap your tunic like you've done every day since you were old enough to be called a man. Your wife is still asleep, back turned, one hand clutched to her chest as if guarding her dreams. The city hums beyond the doorway. Rome doesn't wait for anyone, not even for minds still foggy from poor sleep. Your sandals slap against the stone as you walk toward the thermae, the public baths. They've always been a source of pride, of culture, of Romanness. To bathe is to participate in the very order of the world. The poor might scramble to eat, but even they line up for the baths. Everyone bathes. Everyone belongs. You've always loved the routine. Enter the appetiterium, disrobe under watchful eyes. Store your clothes in little niches and trust the slaves not to steal them. Then, oil up, scrape down, step into the caldarium for the sweat, the tepidarium for warmth, the frigidarium to finish. Each chamber like a chapter in a sacred book. But lately, something's different. The air smells off, less like heat and salt and man, more like something metallic, like the taste of a bitten lip that lingers too long. You chalk it up to the season, or the new plumber who replaced the lead piping behind the main basin. He worked fast, too fast. You shrug it off. You always do. Inside the apoditerium, voices bounce off the stone. Casual, joking, half-yawned conversations. You know these men. A baker, a tailor, two former soldiers who now sell fish and pretend they were generals. One of them, Lucius, greets you with a nod. "You're late," he says. You don't remember being late, but you nod anyway. Lucius doesn't laugh. That's when you notice. His eyes are bloodshot, not red from wine or sun, but pale pink, like watered-down pain. He blinks too often. Didn't sleep, he mutters. Kept hearing dripping sounds, even after I left the baths. You nod again, because you've heard them too. The caldarium greets you with warmth, the kind that wraps around you like an embrace and slowly squeezes. It should be relaxing, but today it presses too much on your chest. You sit on the stone bench, sweat prickling your forehead within seconds. Across from you, an old man scratches at his arms, long red welts running down his forearms like cracked pottery. He doesn't seem to notice. Someone farts in the corner. No one reacts. The silence becomes heavy. You close your eyes and breathe deep. The steam smells faintly sweet, and that's when you remember what your neighbor said a week ago about the new wine merchant using sapa, boiled grape syrup, to sweeten everything. Everyone does it, but he's using too much. He adds lead, the best sweetener in Rome, cheaper than honey, tasteless, and deadly. Of course, everyone knows that lead is poisonous, in theory. But in practice, Rome is built on lead. The aqueducts use it. The pots are glazed with it. The cups shine because of it. Even the face powders women smear on their cheeks contain trace amounts. It's civilization's secret ingredient. You open your eyes. The tiles ripple. You blink. No, they're still. You tell yourself it's the steam. You move to the next chamber. The tepidarium is calmer, cooler, a place to pause. You sit by the mosaic wall and trace the outline of a dolphin with your finger. It feels wrong. Not slick and smooth, but powdery, like stone that's forgotten it's supposed to pretend to be alive. The man beside you murmurs to himself. Latin, yes, but not in any sentence you recognize. His lips move too fast. He's whispering names, maybe dates, maybe prayers. You leave before he finishes. In the frigidarium, the cold is sharp, bracing. You dunk yourself with practiced ease and gasp, but the water feels thicker today. Not dirtier, just heavier, like it's pressing into your pores, into your brain. You stay under longer than usual. When you rise, you feel clear, for a moment. The fog is always just outside the edge of vision now. Not strong enough to scare you, just enough to make everything distant, softer, less urgent. You dry off, redress, return to the appetiterium where your clothes wait. Your sandals are wet. You don't remember them being wet. You walk home. The city is louder now, or maybe your ears are more sensitive. You rub your temples. The noise echoes inside. Rome is always alive, but today it feels like it's breathing through you. The city exhales, and your thoughts scatter. You reach your home. Your wife greets you with a kiss. You forget her name. Just for a second. She doesn't notice. But you do. You return the next day. Of course you do. How could you not? The sensation of gliding through a pool of perfect warmth, the soft steam wrapping your face, the sweet scent of cedarwood and lavender clinging to your skin. It's more than cleansing. It's ritual, comfort, identity. You don't just feel clean, you feel Roman. But this time, your footsteps are slower, not cautious, just contemplative. There's a little fog behind your eyes this morning. You misbuttoned your tunic. You forgot a friend's name in conversation? A fluke, surely. Maybe you didn't sleep well, or maybe it's the bath. But that's silly. Everyone bathes. So you pay your entrance fee, shed your clothes, and descend again into the scented heat. The slaves rub your arms with perfumed oils, scrape your back with the bronze strigil. You wince slightly. The metal's a little sharper today. Or maybe your skin is a little thinner. You move into the tepidarium. It's quiet this morning. A senator reads silently on a marble bench. A child splashes in the shallows. You sit at the edge of the pool and cup some water in your hand. It glimmers. You sip it without thinking. It tastes sweet, not sugary, soft, smooth, refreshing. The Romans actually have a word for that flavor, plumbum dulcis, sweet lead. Lead makes water taste better. It gives wine a certain brightness. It helps your silver goblets resist tarnish. And behind the walls of this building, behind every mosaic dolphin, every painted fresco, Lead is everywhere. In the pipes that carry your water, in the lining of the water tanks, even in the tools used by the physicians next door. You don't know that, of course. You just know this is the best bathhouse in the city. The Hippocaust hums beneath your feet. That underfloor heating system, the pride of Roman engineering, warms the stone tiles perfectly. The water is always the right temperature, always inviting, and always just a little more toxic than the day before. Because here's the problem. Heat and lead, they're not friends. They're conspirators. The warmer the water, the more lead dissolves into it. The longer the system runs, the more the pipes degrade. And the longer you soak, the more you absorb. Historians still debate whether the Romans suspected the danger. Some point to old medical texts describing the painter's colic, stabbing abdominal pain, confusion, mood swings, as evidence that the elite noticed something was wrong. Others argue the effects were too subtle, too slow, too easy to mistake for bad air, bad wine, or bad luck. But modern archaeologists don't argue about the aftermath. We've tested the bones. Roman remains, especially from urban elites, show lead concentrations 50 to 100 times higher than those found in pre-Roman populations. In some aristocratic families, the levels are off the charts. So high, they would be considered lethal today. So high, they would guarantee brain damage, infertility, neurological decline. And where do we find the highest levels? In men and women who lived closest to the empire's luxuries. The ones who bathed daily. The ones who drank wine sweetened with lead acetate. The ones who built their villas with lead-coated plumbing and marble tubs fed by boiling aqueducts. You're one of them. You walk through the caldarium, the hottest room. The ceiling disappears into mist. The heat presses into your chest. You dip your hand again. That same water, that same shimmer. No visible change, no warning sign. But now it's carrying more than warmth. Your skin, now soft from steam, becomes a sponge. The pores open. The strigil marks, tiny abrasions, hundreds of them, become doorways. And the lead seeps in. But lead is sneaky. It doesn't cause fever. It doesn't swell or bleed. It whispers. You start to forget names. You fumble your speech. You lose patience with your slave. You miss your turn in a board game you've played for years. One of your friends, he forgot his own son's birthday last week. He laughed it off. You laughed with him, but you both came to the baths afterward, and neither of you left any wiser. Lead isn't the only thing working its way into your bloodstream. Behind the scenes, mercury is also gaining popularity. Roman physicians love its balancing warmth. They prescribe it in tinctures, pills, and pastes, especially for patients showing signs of mental fog or agitated spirits. The cure? More metal. When you complain of mood swings, they'll rub a mixture of crushed pearls and powdered lead into your temples. If your wife reports irregularities in her monthly cycle, she'll be given a drink made with vinegar, myrrh, and a pinch of lead salts. You see, lead is everywhere because it's invisible. You can't see it. You can't smell it. And you can't resist what you don't perceive. You walk back toward the frigidarium, the cool-down pool. A few boys are wrestling in the shallow end. You dunk your head to rinse off and emerge, gasping, refreshed. The cold is invigorating. Your heart pumps faster. And with every beat, your blood carries a few more micrograms of poison to your brain. But you don't feel sick. Not yet. That's what makes it work. By the time symptoms appear, The cause is too deeply buried to see. Your physician will say it's nerves. Your neighbors will say it's spirits. You might say nothing at all. Just go back to the baths. Again and again. You towel off slowly. One of the mirrors near the exit catches your reflection. You look well. Your skin glows. Your posture straightens. There's even a hint of smugness around your eyes. That's the Roman promise. Power through wellness. Purity through routine. And now that routine is killing you. Tomorrow you'll return. Of course you will. You'll walk the same marble corridors, cup the same sweet water, breathe the same perfumed steam. And with every soak, your body will carry just a little more lead, and your mind will slip just a little further from the clarity it once had. But hey, at least you'll be clean. You begin to notice it now. Not all at once, no. That's not how it works. The bath doesn't attack you with knives and blood. It seduces you with warmth. It lulls you with whispers of health and luxury. But somewhere deep in your joints, in the gray fog behind your forehead, in the way your hands tremble when you reach for your sandals, you start to feel it. Today, you hesitate before entering. Not because you're afraid. Don't be silly. You're a Roman citizen after all. You've got property, status, a sturdy spine. No, it's not fear. It's a thought, a flicker, a doubt that vanishes the moment the steam hits your skin. Inside the tepidarium, the same attendants nod at you with polite, lead-glazed smiles. You recognize a few familiar faces. That merchant who used to dominate every conversation? He's quieter now. His gaze wanders. The woman with the tightly wrapped hair. Her left eye droops slightly today. Her laugh is brittle. And over there, that old man. He's slumped over like a puppet with half its strings cut. He drools a little when he talks. You tell yourself it's aging. Coincidence. Maybe a bad fig harvest this year. You slip into the warm water anyway, because it's beautiful. And it feels right. The water holds you like memory. But the truth? It doesn't hold you. It holds everything. This pool you're soaking in? It hasn't been emptied in months, possibly years. Sure, water's added each day, but it's just to replace what's lost to evaporation or the splash of careless limbs. The rest, what's already in here, is as ancient as the mosaics. And that's where the real danger begins. The Romans didn't have chlorine, no disinfectants, no drainage systems, no understanding of bacteria. And the bathhouses? They were warm, crowded, and rarely cleaned. That's paradise for microbes. Let's talk about Legionella. Modern scientists named it after a modern disaster. But the bacteria? It's ancient, thrives in warm water, spreads through mist, inhales itself right into your lungs. You wouldn't know it's there until your cough deepens, your chest tightens, and you wake one morning, too weak to stand. There's Staphylococcus aureus, quietly living on someone's scraped shoulder. There's Pseudomonas, sliding through the grime around the pool edges. There's E. coli, because, let's be honest, do you think every single person rinses themselves thoroughly before entering? Rome might be clean compared to Gaul, but no civilization is that clean. You see a boy dive beneath the surface and open his eyes underwater. He comes up grinning, but you wonder. You really wonder, for the first time, what he just let in. And then there's the fungal bloom, that invisible film clinging to the bottom of the pool, too thin to see, too slippery to notice until you're lying on your back wondering what just happened. You start to itch your upper arm, a spot near your ribs. Nothing dramatic, just an irritation. You rub it with the edge of your towel, but it lingers. Later, it becomes a rash, slightly red, a little raised. You'll call it a heat reaction or sun exposure. Maybe something in the oils. It's not. What's happening is bacterial colonization. Your skin, softened by heat and oil, scraped raw by the strigil, is now a welcome mat for pathogens. Tiny abrasions, invisible to the naked eye, become open invitations. Your skin barrier? Gone. The bath's defenses? Non-existent. That soothing warmth? It's basically a petri dish. You overhear a conversation between two physicians near the massage room. One complains that patients lately seem less resilient, more mysterious fevers, more fatigue, more madness. The other scoffs. It's the weather, he says. Perhaps a curse. The gods are restless. Neither of them suspects the baths. Why would they? The baths are sacred. They're tradition. They're Rome. You dry off beside a man who looks wrong. His skin has a strange sheen. You can smell something beneath the perfume, a sourness, almost metallic. He says nothing, just stares at the wall. His pupils don't dilate properly in the torchlight. His fingers twitch as he pulls on his tunic. You politely smile and step away. Later that night, your rash spreads. A few days from now, it will blister, and in a week, it might open. And you still won't blame the bath, because the bath is where you feel most alive, even as it begins to rot you from the outside in. Historians still argue how aware people were of the danger. Some claim ancient graffiti warned of itching after the plunge. Others believe lower classes stopped bathing during certain seasons, but it's hard to tell. The Roman record is full of praise for the bathhouses, rarely suspicion, almost never criticism. You want to believe it's all in your head, but it's not. It's under your skin now. And all the while, the water remains warm, inviting, deadly. Because for bacteria, this bathhouse isn't a threat. It's home. You barely notice the scrape at first. It happens between one breath and the next. A soft hiss of metal over skin. The rhythmic ritual you've grown so accustomed to, so embedded in your sense of self-care, that your brain doesn't even register pain. The slave behind you wields the strigil with practiced detachment. Bronze against your shoulder, then your spine, then your lower back. You flinch slightly. He doesn't. He's done this hundreds of times today, thousands this week. You're just one more slick, oiled body in a long line of Roman citizens seeking cleanliness, order, and that oddly addictive post-bath glow. You do not question the strigil. No one does. It's as Roman as aqueducts and arrogance. Still, you feel something. Something more than the usual sting. The kind of sensation that lingers, that draws your mind back even after you've moved on. But there's no pause in the routine. The oil has already been slathered on. Thick and fragrant, a mix of pressed olives and sweet myrtle leaves. Your pores are wide open from the caldarium heat. Your muscles are soft, pliant. The strigil doesn't just remove sweat and grime. It removes a layer of you, literally. You watch the thin ribbons of skin and oil curl away from the blade's edge. They fall to the marble floor, pooled around your feet. The slave steps over them without blinking. It's supposed to be purifying. A cleansing of not just dirt, but of city stress, of fatigue, of weakness. But what if it's the opposite? Let's consider the tool. The strigil is elegantly simple. A curved strip of metal, bronze or copper, or even lead-lined if you're wealthy enough to own a custom set. It's not sharp like a knife, but it doesn't need to be. All it requires is repetition and friction, and when used on skin that's just been oiled and steamed and softened, it doesn't just exfoliate, it lacerates, microscopically, invisibly. Tiny tears, pinprick wounds, 1,000 entry points you can't see or feel. Not now, not yet. You finish the scraping and thank the attendant. He moves on to the next citizen, a merchant with silver-dyed sandals. You towel yourself off with linen that smells faintly of mildew. Not that it's unwashed, just overused. The fabric is rough, almost abrasive. You rub it along your arms, your chest, your thighs. You notice the faint red tracks beginning to bloom across your skin, like little vines growing from your pores. You step into the frigidarium to close your pores, or so you've been told. The water is biting, refreshing, shocking. For a moment, it feels like everything is tightening. Your skin, your mind, your thoughts. The scrape marks vanish under the cold. The itch fades, but they'll return. You leave the bathhouse feeling clean, victorious. You've performed the full ritual. You smell of bay leaves and heated marble. Your skin glows, except it doesn't. Not for long. That evening, it starts. A tingling itch behind your knee, then on your shoulder, then a patch on your lower back that seems rougher than it should be. You ignore it. You tell yourself the linen was too coarse. Maybe the oil was old. Maybe the slave pressed too hard. You'll bring your own towel tomorrow. You don't yet realize that what's happening is bacterial infiltration. Your skin, freshly abraded by the strigil, no longer functions as a barrier. It's a highway. You've opened yourself to Staphylococcus aureus, which lives invisibly on the tiles, on the strigil, on the hands of every other bather. It's opportunistic. It loves warmth, moisture, tiny wounds. You've also welcomed Pseudomonas aeruginosa, a waterborne bacterium that clings to the piping, thrives in steam, and lurks in the frigidarium. It seeps into abrasions and causes rashes so persistent they last for months. Its favorite host? Skin recently stripped of its natural defenses. There's even Trichophyton rubrum, a fungus that loves the folds of skin around the groin, armpits, and toes. In your time, it's called nothing at all. Just the itch. It spreads through communal towels, through unwashed benches, through feet touching the same mosaic paths every day. But it's not just your skin. It's your bloodstream, too. The abrasions, no matter how shallow, open the possibility for streptococcal infections, for impetigo, for erysipelas, a bacterial invasion that starts as a red patch and becomes an oozing wound within days. You're not alone. Look around your insula, your neighborhood. The boy down the hall has a red ring on his cheek that wasn't there last week. Your cousin's elbow is flaking strangely. One of your slaves is limping, hiding something under a wrap. You don't ask. No one talks about it, because everyone assumes the same thing. It's the heat, or the summer oils, or the gods testing their patience. Historians still debate whether Romans understood this link. Some fragments of medical writing mention feverish boils and skin demons. One treatise even advises against bathing during a full moon, lest the skin turn to paste. But none of them mention strigils. None suggest the tool might be to blame. Why would they? The strigil is sacred. To cleanse is to rise above. To scrape is to become stronger. And no Roman wants to be called soft or unwashed or, gods forbid, barbarian. You go back to the baths the next day. The itching is worse now. You try not to scratch, but your fingers wander. A slave notices your red patch and offers a different oil, spiced with coriander and sulfur. It helps, for an hour. Then the rash spreads. That evening, you scratch yourself raw. You wake up with blood under your nails. You dress quickly, ashamed, but you still return. Because you think the solution is more bathing. A different temperature, a new oil, a longer soak, a shorter scrape. You're not wrong. It does make you feel better, but only because your nerves are adapting. Your body is beginning to surrender. That's how it works. The baths don't kill quickly. They drain you slowly. They replace your immune system with rituals. They convince you that disease is just the body adjusting, that cleanliness means pain. And the strigil? It becomes a quiet knife, one you thank every time it cuts you. Tomorrow, a new patch will form on your thigh. The next week, your slave will have something similar. 2 weeks later, the man on the bench beside you will disappear, and someone will whisper about skin rot. But they won't say the word aloud. They'll just stop sitting near where he used to bathe. And still, the bronze strigil will glide. Again and again and again. You scratch your neck. Again. This is becoming a habit. At first it was just an itch, small, forgettable, a whisper across your skin. But now it flares up without warning, on your shoulders, behind your knees, beneath your ribs, places no one sees, places even you forget until they burn. This morning, you catch your reflection in the polished bronze mirror hanging beside the atrium. Your skin isn't glowing anymore, not like it did in the early days of your bathhouse routine. Not golden and dewy, not Roman. Number now, it's red in patches, glossy in the worst way, like meat left too long in the sun. A few areas have begun to flake. One spot on your forearm has cracked. You blame the sun or the wind, or maybe your diet. Maybe the fish from yesterday's lunch was off. But deep down, you suspect otherwise. Still, you go to the bathhouse. Of course you do. The moment you step inside, your body seems to sigh in relief. The stone beneath your feet is warm. The scent of thyme and bay, leaves curls up into your nostrils. Steam gathers at the corners of the ceiling. And for a moment, everything feels all right. The scrape comes next. Oil. Then strigil. Then plunge. The routine never changes. Except today, the strigil passes over a patch of skin that isn't quite ready. Your arm jerks reflexively. You hiss. The attendant apologizes, dabbing gently at the area. It's bleeding now. A small line of red tracing the groove of yesterday's scrape. Right into the dermis. And into that line, into your open skin, flows the water of Rome. Water that's not just warm, not just soothing, but shared by hundreds of bodies and their rashes and their sores. You slide into the caldarium like always. The heat fogs your vision. The stones sweat. The man beside you has a growth behind his ear. You pretend not to notice. He smells faintly of iron, like rust, like blood. You look down and realize the same water is washing over both of you. You begin to understand something the Empire has no word for. That these pools are not just water. They are human. They are skin and hair and bacteria and oil. They are dozens of infections flowing through a single shared circulatory system. The bath is a bloodstream, and you are a cell drifting within it. And what is infecting one is infecting all. Let's talk about what happens next. Those tiny cracks in your skin, microscopic entry points, are now hosting guests. The bacteria have names: Streptococcus, Staphylococcus, Corynebacterium. But you don't need to know their names. You just feel them. They feed on oil, on sweat, on warmth. They settle into the pores and multiply, rapidly, aggressively. Your skin begins to rebel. The patch behind your knee balloons. It pulses when you walk. The itch has turned to ache. The ache to fire. You visit a physician. He squints at your arm, rubs it, offers a paste of vinegar and ashes, maybe a warmed fig compress. You nod. You apply the mixture. It stings. Nothing changes. He tells you it's imbalance, or melancholy, or bile. He doesn't mention the bathhouse. No one does. Historians still argue whether Roman doctors recognized skin disease as contagious. Some scrolls mention soul wounds of the skin, illnesses brought on by stress or spirits. Others describe plagues that begin as itching and end with fever. But there's no mention of shared water, no suspicion of the strigil, no criticism of the sacred ritual. So you continue. You wear a longer tunic to cover the redness. You sit further from others in the tepidarium. You bring your own towel now, though it changes nothing. The itching intensifies. You dream of being flayed, of peeling off your skin like a tunic. You wake up sweating. The heat outside doesn't help. It's summer now. Flies gather near your windowsill. You swat them away with trembling fingers. There's a boil forming near your armpit. You try not to touch it, but it weeps clear fluid. Your friends notice, but say nothing. One of them has similar marks on his thigh. Another walks with a limp he didn't have last month. You pass each other in the apoditerium, the changing room. Eyes lowered, sleeves long. You speak of politics, of gladiators, of the emperor's new monument. You never speak of the rot. Because to admit that the bathhouse is hurting you, that would mean breaking faith. And Rome does not question the bath. One day, you see a boy being carried out of the caldarium. His skin is swollen, his lips cracked. He whimpers softly, too weak to speak. His father follows close behind, expression blank. No one rushes to help. No one asks what happened, because everyone knows. The bath gives, and the bath takes. But still you go. Even now, even as the rashes creep along your spine, even as your armpits blister, even as the skin between your toes begins to peel and weep and crack. Because what else would you do? Not bathe? Not be Roman? You've come too far for that. And besides, you tell yourself, maybe this is just a passing illness. Maybe next week you'll feel better. Maybe you'll find a new oil. Maybe the physician's honey poultice will work this time. You turn over in bed that night, careful not to touch the raw patch on your hip. You listen to the dripping cistern outside your window. You try not to scratch. Tomorrow, you'll rise early and go bathe. You wake to a day that feels different, dimmer, as if the light itself has been drawn away from your eyes. The city stirs outside your window, but as you rise, you're not sure you can see it clearly. Your vision, once sharp and sure, now shimmers at the edges with uncertainty. You don't know when it began. Perhaps in the hazy aftermath of yesterday's heat, when the bath's steam clung to your skin and your eyes remained half closed in a daze. Today, the change is unmistakable. The colors blur slightly. Outlines of familiar objects seem to waver, as though the world is softly melting into a watercolor canvas. In the morning, you had wandered into the bathhouse as usual. But as you stepped into the steaming caldarium, something in the high, sweltering heat made your eyes water, not with relief, but with an unfamiliar sting. At first, you brushed it off as merely the expected reaction to intense heat and the thick humidity. After all, the Romans believed that warm steam was a blessing, a purification that opened every pore, including those delicate orifices of the eyes. But soon, the discomfort deepened, shifting from a transient sting to a persistent, creeping pressure behind your eyelids. As you lowered yourself into the water, you noticed that the steam now carried a subtle, almost imperceptible glimmer of particles. The water, which once seemed perfectly clear and inviting, now appeared to have tiny motes suspended within it, like countless little flecks that danced in the light. At the time, you could have dismissed them as harmless reflections. But now you wonder, were those the beginnings of a microbial assault on your vision? In the dim light of the caldarium, you catch your reflection in the smooth surface of the pool. Your eyes, normally bright and confident, seem clouded. A thin film of steam, and perhaps something else, hugs the corners of your vision. You blink, trying to clear your sight, but the clarity remains elusive. There is a strange mix of comfort and menace in the heat that envelopes you. A familiar, soothing warmth that seduces you, yet one that might be gradually erasing your ability to see clearly. You recall whispered tales among your fellow citizens, stories of a phenomenon they called ocular decay that sometimes struck after long, indulgent baths. They murmured of loved ones slowly losing their sight, their eyes dulling as if nature itself was reclaiming what was once taken by overindulgence. Some even joked, with a dark humor that was uniquely Roman, that the baths cleanse more than your body. They cleanse your vision until nothing remains to see. You laugh along, too, dismissing such superstitions as mere exaggeration. Yet now, with the edges of your world fading, you can no longer be so sure. In the caldarium, the air is heavy with vapor, and every breath you take fills your lungs with moist, mineral-laden steam. What you don't see, however, is the silent work of bacteria and parasites. The warm, unfiltered water, ever replenished yet never fully refreshed, has turned the pool into a breeding ground. As you relax, microscopic invaders, unseen to the naked eye, settle on your eyes. Bacteria such as Pseudomonas aeruginosa and Staphylococcus aureus, ever in search of soft, moist sanctuaries, find the surface of your eye to be an ideal landing strip. Even more troubling are the minuscule parasites that could latch onto the delicate tissue of your eyelids and corneas, drawn by the lingering warmth and the constant flow of contaminated water. You recall that Roman physicians, with their limited understanding of microbial life, prescribed lavish treatments for what they called eye fire and sight dimming. They used mixtures of crushed herbs, honey, and even lead compounds, believing that these substances could somehow balance the humors. Historians still argue whether these treatments were mere desperate measures or if there was a kernel of wisdom hidden in their practice. But you now wonder if every time you opened your eyes in the steamy haze, you were slowly succumbing to a form of blindness that no man could arrest. Throughout the day, you notice your eyes strain more with every glance. You find yourself squinting at the fine details of the mosaics lining the bathhouse walls, where once you admired the intricate patterns with unfettered delight. Now, those patterns dissolve into a blur of colors and shapes that you must peer at carefully. A friend tells you later in hushed tones that he too has noticed a change, his sight growing dim, as if a fog has settled in his very mind. You both exchange furtive glances, a silent acknowledgement of a shared, growing terror. Outside the bathhouse, during a rare moment of respite, you step into the cool morning light. The sharp sun contrasts brutally with the soft haze of the interior. For a fleeting moment, you feel a brief clarity, a flash of vibrant color, a crisp outline of a distant column. It is fleeting, however, as the brilliance recedes back into the murk, leaving a stubborn trail of uncertainty. You wonder if these episodes of clarity are glimpses of your old vision or mere tricks of the light, transient and unreliable. As the day progresses, the cumulative toll becomes harder to ignore. Every time you close your eyes, darkness lingers longer than it should. When you sleep, your dreams are filled with images of endless water and swirling particles, hints of shapes you cannot quite discern. You wake up with a vague sense of loss, as if you're continuously losing small pieces of your sight, minute fragments of your visual world eroding away. The Temple of Bath, which you once revered as the ultimate mark of Roman civility, now feels like an insidious trap. You recall the sweet taste of lead in the water from yesterday's soak. The very quality that once delighted your palate now seems a poisonous reminder of everything you've lost. You are living proof of a luxury that gradually corrodes its devotees. An irony not lost on you now that your vision is dimming. In whispered conversations later, others mention that their eyes have felt unusually heavy, nearly falling shut during daily routines. A senator, once known for his piercing gaze, now wears darkened spectacles indoors, a rare accessory in your time. Journal entries mention clouded visions and fading glances, yet no one speaks openly of it. The silence is a quiet, collective despair. Every Roman appears too wrapped up in his own pursuit of purity to notice that the very act of bathing has begun to blind them. You try the physician's advice, rinsing your eyes with a mixture of herbal infusions that promise to clear the mists away. Instead, the solution stings, and any momentary relief is replaced by a harsher, burning sensation. You're told it might be a seasonal malaise or simply the cost of a refined lifestyle. But deep inside, you know the truth. Every time you bathe, every time you immerse your eyes in that perfect, toxic steam, your sight frays a little more. The realization is horrifying. The very practice that has defined your identity, that you have worn as a badge of civilization and honor, is slowly robbing you of one of your most fundamental senses. Roman culture extolled the virtues of cleanliness, eloquently praising the daily rituals that set them apart from the so-called barbarians. Yet here you are, a citizen of the greatest empire, fighting against a creeping darkness that no amount of oil or strigil can remove. There is a bitter humor to it too. You recall a jest by a fellow bather. Bathing so often that even our eyes grow weary of beauty. At the time, you laughed, thinking it was a clever quip. Now, as you squint at the world, you can only wonder if the joke was on everyone all along. Your thoughts drift to the fragile nature of civilization itself. Rome prides itself on monumental achievements, engineering marvels, and the art of refinement. But as you stagger through the fading light of day, you realize that all these marvels rest upon a foundation of decay, subtle, insidious decay that begins at the surface of your skin, in the very windows of your soul. You acknowledge, with a sense of resigned dread that you are at the mercy of the bathhouse. Every steaming session, every moment of that warm, inviting haze chips away at your clarity. In the end, perhaps blindness is not the punishment, but the inevitable consequence of being caught in the confluence of luxury and poison. And as you slowly retreat to your modest abode, the twilight envelops you, mirroring the slow, creeping loss of your own vision. You know with a heavy heart that tomorrow you will return again. Because what choice do you have? The bath is not merely a place of indulgence. It is the essence of Roman identity. And with each return, you risk losing a little more of what made you see the world as it once was. The pain in your joints is no longer a passing ache. It greets you in the morning before your feet touch the floor. A deep, gnawing sensation in your knees and elbows, your spine stiff as marble. You roll your neck and it cracks audibly, like dried branches. And still, you go to the baths, because that's what Romans do. You trudge along the same cobbled path, past the baker's stall with its steaming loaves, past the shouting fishmongers at the portico. You nod to a merchant, though you can't quite recall his name anymore. He doesn't seem to recognize you either. Or maybe he's simply distracted. Everyone seems distracted lately, as if some silent malaise has settled over the city, sapping memory and mood with every shared breath. At the thermae, you follow the steps like a sleepwalker. Disrobe, oil, scrape, soak. But now each motion feels heavier than the last. The aches no longer vanish with the heat. If anything, they intensify. The steam soothes at first, but then leaves you drained. Your limbs sag. Your fingers tremble. You need to rest between rooms now, leaning against pillars like an old senator between speeches. You are not alone in this. Everywhere, the signs of systemic fatigue are surfacing. Slaves collapse mid-service. Veterans who once bragged of triumphs in Gaul now limp on canes. Children grow unusually quiet. There is a sluggishness to the city that cannot be blamed on heat alone. And when you speak of it, if you dare, it's always brushed off. It's the season, they say. Try goat's milk. Eat more olives. No one says. It's the bathhouse, because no one wants it to be true. Yet you've begun to notice the patterns. The longer you attend the baths, the heavier your limbs feel. Your stomach, too, has grown unpredictable, lurching at odd times, sometimes bloated, sometimes hollow. You assumed it was the food, or perhaps your neighbor's oversalted stew. But then comes the fever. It arrives as a whisper in your bones, a tingling chill under the skin, even as you stand in the heat of the tepidarium. Your body sweats more than usual, not from exertion, but from something internal, chemical, rising. The physician calls it internal fire. He prescribes garlic broth and warm poultices, maybe leeches if you're unlucky. He never asks about your bathing habits, but you remember the water. You remember the sores on the man beside you yesterday. The blood-tinged towel, the pus-filled blister that burst as a young boy scraped his shoulder on the strigil. You remember the pool in the Laconicum, swirling faintly as if something was alive beneath the surface. And in a way, it was. You've heard whispers of a strange new illness. Not a plague, nothing so dramatic, but something slower. A creeping rot that begins with the joints, then spreads through the blood, turning the body inward against itself. One scholar in the forum called it invisible poison. Another claimed the gods were punishing the empire for its decadence, but you begin to suspect something far simpler. Your body is losing the will to heal. Every small scrape now blooms into a red patch. A cut on your ankle refuses to close. The skin around your eyes has grown thin, papery. You see older men with wrapped knees, women walking with stooped backs. Not from old age, but from exhaustion. You begin to wonder if it's your own immune system that's unraveling, slowly, cell by cell. Historians still argue whether Roman physicians understood autoimmunity. Some ancient texts reference self-consuming blood, a mysterious force that devours vitality. But the bathhouse is never implicated. Why would it be? The baths are sacred. Yet as you lie on the marble bench, watching a droplet of water trace its path along the stone, a thought forms. What if this ritual is not just washing your body, but also leaching away your resilience? The same water that touches your cuts touches everyone else's. The oils rubbed on your chest were rubbed on someone else's boil-ridden back only hours before. The steam you inhale carries the breath of dozens of strangers. And the strigil, gods, the strigil, passes from body to body, each scrape a potential invitation to invasion. You wonder how long your body can keep fighting. You shift your weight, your hip cracks again. Your wrist has a strange stiffness now, like bone scraping bone. Your breath shortens in humid air, and your thoughts grow darker. You consider not going back tomorrow, but even that feels like a betrayal, not of yourself, but of Rome. To stop bathing is to renounce your place. It is to step outside the collective, to live as the unwashed, the poor, the primitive. So you will return. You know you will, even as your joints creak like rusted hinges, even as your nights become restless, filled with phantom itches and burning knees, even as your hands shake when you reach for the strigil. Because in Rome, it is better to suffer beautifully than to live filthily. You leave the bathhouse slower than before. Your gait is uneven. The stone is slick. You nearly slip, but catch yourself on a pillar. No one notices. You pass a woman on the way out. She has a bandage across her collarbone. Her eyes are sunken. She looks at you with a knowing, weary gaze. You nod, silently. You both know, but neither of you says it. You sit in your cubiculum late that night, the lamplight flickering across the stucco walls. Your hand trembles slightly as you hold the reed pen, trying to finish a simple letter to a friend across the Tiber. The words come slowly. You forget the phrasing for common terms, words you've written a dozen times before. You stop and stare at your own script, unsure if it's legible or if it even makes sense. Your thoughts feel like threads unraveling, and no matter how tightly you grasp, they slip through your fingers. You try to recall the morning. Did you eat breakfast? Did you visit the tailor? Did you forget to pay the vendor again? You genuinely don't know. And you're starting to be afraid. Lead doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It enters quietly, hidden in the sweet tang of your wine, in the water that flows from the marble fountains, in the very makeup your wife applies each morning. But most of all, it hides in the steam of your daily bath, whispering itself into your lungs, your pores, your blood. By the time it reaches your brain, it's too late. You weren't always like this. There was a time, not long ago, when your wit was sharp, your memory crisp. You argued politics in the forum, delivered quips that turned heads. You remembered birthdays. You corrected your friend's Greek. Now, you walk into a room and forget why you're there. You greet your neighbors by the wrong names. You drift off mid-conversation and blink, confused, as if waking from sleep. And worse, sometimes you don't realize it happened at all. Historians still debate how much Rome's cognitive health suffered due to lead poisoning. Some say the elites of the empire suffered a generational decline, marked by impulsivity, poor judgment, and mental fog. Others argue the evidence is too circumstantial. But even they can't ignore the curious symptoms that began appearing en masse near the end. Erratic leadership, strange laws, repeated poor decisions, bursts of cruelty, followed by detached apathy. You don't need scrolls or scholarly debate. You live it. You feel your patience thinning, once steady, now frayed. You lash out at your wife over trivial things. You weep over small losses. You laugh at odd times, even in silence. Sometimes your emotions don't feel like your own. Sometimes they feel like echoes inside a jar. And every time, you return to the bath. Because part of you still believes that the ritual will fix it. That maybe, with the right oil, the right temperature, the right herbs, you'll emerge refreshed, reborn. That the forgetfulness is just fatigue. That your shaking hands are from hunger. That the bath isn't the cause, it's the cure. You cling to that lie because you must. Today, in the tepidarium, a young man stares blankly at a wall. He doesn't blink. He doesn't react when the attendant brushes against him. He doesn't move for nearly 10 minutes. You watch in silence, not out of concern, but because you recognize that stillness. You've been there. You see another man muttering to himself, repeating phrases under his breath, fragments of legal proceedings or oaths. His eyes dart in all directions. His feet don't stay still. You wonder if he was once a senator. The decline is no longer invisible. It walks beside you, bathes beside you, exhales beside you in the same steamy air. There are no outward signs that tie it all together. No citywide panic. No proclamations. Just individuals quietly slipping into fog, one at a time, each thinking they're alone. Rome's decline doesn't roar. It whispers. It slips through the aqueduct. It floats on scented vapors. It seeps into the marble walls and the bronze strigils. It curls around your neck like a silken noose, warm and familiar. And still, you go back. Because the bath is not just a habit. It's your identity. It's how others know you. It's how you know yourself. To stop would be to invite ridicule, suspicion, even shame. You'd be treated as an outsider, a barbarian, an invalid. So you continue, and the lead continues. It doesn't kill you with a sword. It dulls the edge of your mind. First your memory, then your reasoning, then your language, then your will. By the time your body is too weak to walk to the baths, it no longer matters. You'll sit in your cubiculum, blinking at the wall, unsure what time it is, what day, what season. Someone will spoon broth into your mouth, and you'll forget how to swallow. And Rome will keep steaming. Even now, as the empire spreads across continents, as generals parade through triumphal arches, as poets recite odes beneath marble columns, its best minds are unraveling. And the tragedy? No one sees it, because no one remembers what clarity felt like, least of all, you. You wake in the middle of the night to a sharp pain in your abdomen. It coils beneath your ribs like a tightening knot. You curl forward, instinctively clutching at your stomach, hoping it's just a bad fig or a spoiled olive from yesterday's dinner. But the pain doesn't pass. It pulses, radiates, twists deeper. You try to sit up, but the cramp forces you still. You breathe shallowly, listening to the quiet dark of your domus. Even the walls seem to press in on you, heavy with the weight of the night. By morning, the pain is still there, duller now, but constant. You drink water, nibble some bread, but everything tastes metallic. You assume it's the copper pitcher, or maybe the wine from last night, but it's not. The sour, acrid tang now coats your tongue no matter what you consume. This isn't just fatigue or fog or rash anymore. This is something inside you, clawing for attention. You drag yourself to the bath, thinking, hoping it will help. You've heard stories of steam soothing gut troubles. Some claim that a soak in the laconicum followed by a cold plunge rebalances the humors. So you go, because you always go, but the heat no longer comforts you. As the steam closes around you, the nausea returns. Your skin, flushed from the warmth, begins to itch in places you can't reach. You sit on the bench and feel the bile rising. The oil clings to your skin like wax. The sweat feels cold. Your stomach clenches again. The others don't seem to notice. Or maybe they do, and they're simply too tired to care. You glance around and see signs everywhere. Gaunt faces, trembling fingers, bloating in some, emaciation in others. A rot, slow and elegant, is taking root in Rome's body. Not in one man or a single street, but across the city like mold behind polished fresco. What's happening isn't sudden. It's cumulative. This is what happens when your body can no longer process the very luxuries that define your life. When the water, the oils, the perfumes, the lead-laced wine, and the gilded plates become too much for the liver to bear. When the kidneys begin to falter, when your gut becomes inflamed by metals and microbes and molds. But it's not called illness. Not yet. It's simply part of being Roman. You recall a story told by a physician, well-meaning but blind. He once spoke of the wasting stomach, a vague term used to explain what happened to men like you when they grew weary, pale, sore-bellied. His treatment? More baths, more sweat, as if the answer to a slow-burning internal fire was simply to make it boil. Historians still debate whether this early digestive failure, likely what we'd now call chronic lead poisoning or dysbiosis, was ever linked to Roman hygiene rituals. Some point to the autopsies of mummified remains, evidence of tissue degeneration, ulceration, systemic inflammation. Others shrug. Maybe it was the diet or the gods. But you feel it in your bones, in your gut, in your blood. That evening, you try to eat again. A bowl of lentils, a bit of cheese, a few figs. Your tongue recoils. Your throat tightens. The food sits in your stomach like stone. And suddenly, you remember something odd from the bathhouse. A man vomiting in the corner, discreetly into a basin. No one looked. No one asked. He cleaned himself with a cloth, adjusted his robe, and returned to the pool as if nothing had happened. He wasn't ill. Not exactly. He was just Roman. You lean against your doorway, watching the streets glow orange in the late sun. Everything looks as it should. Children run. Traders haggle. A woman tosses flower petals before a procession. The air smells of spices and horse dung. But beneath it all, beneath the robes and perfumes and marble columns, you sense something darker. A slow unraveling. A civilization consuming itself from within. Your stomach cramps again. You don't cry out. You don't call for a physician. You simply wait. because that's what you've been taught. Endure. Bathe. Appear well. To admit otherwise would be weakness. Worse, it would be vulgar. You remember the forums filled with speeches praising Roman resilience. No plague shall strike us, they say. No rot can touch our greatness. But they never mention the quiet afflictions, the invisible ones, the daily, hourly, internal decay caused not by enemies, but by culture, by tradition, by baths. You lie on your bed and stare at the ceiling, tracing the cracks in the plaster. Your fingers twitch. Your breath comes shallow. Somewhere deep in your belly, another pulse of pain rises. Tomorrow, you'll wake and go to the baths again. Because you're Roman, and that's what Romans do, even when it's killing them. You've stopped trusting your own reflection. Each morning, you wash your face in the bronze basin beside your bed. The water is clear, but your face is not. Your skin has grown pale, waxy, almost translucent. The bags beneath your eyes have deepened into bruises, and your lips, once full with the color of life, now look slightly blue, as though the very air has thinned. You lean closer. Your pupils seem smaller. Your cheeks are sunken. And yet, no one comments. Not your neighbors. Not your friends at the bathhouse. Not even your wife. Because they too are changing. And everyone is pretending not to notice. The city hums as usual. Senators deliver speeches. Bakers knead dough. Merchants shout about saffron and salt. But beneath the familiar rhythm lies a strangeness. People move slower. They forget names. They start sentences and abandon them midway. There's a man who's begun walking in circles in the forum. Another who stares into the fountain for hours, unmoving. You see yourself in them. The physicians, still cloaked in their dignity, claim it's seasonal imbalance. They recommend sweet dates, goat's milk, or sleep near pinewood smoke. But you've tried all that. Nothing clears the fog. Nothing stops the dreams. Ah, yes, the dreams. You've started dreaming of drowning, not in water, but in steam. You're back in the caldarium, but the vapors thicken into walls. You wander through them, blind, your breath catching. You hear whispers, names you once knew, faces you now forget. You see people you've lost. And then you wake up coughing, the scent of lead and oil clinging to your skin. Last night, the dream changed. You found yourself staring into a massive stone bath, filled not with water, but with blood. Not bright crimson blood, but dark, sludgy, thick as syrup. Floating in it were objects, combs, cups, coins, broken bits of tile. All of it stained. All of it yours. You jolted awake with a pain behind your eyes. That same morning, a boy collapsed in the frigidarium, just slipped beneath the surface and didn't come up. The attendants dragged him out, his limbs twitching, mouth open. Someone whispered epileptic fit, but others muttered curse. No one said lead. No one ever says lead. Historians still debate whether seizures were common among Rome's elite. Ancient texts describe sacred fits, and some even suggested that the gods touched those afflicted. Others recognized the link to illness, though none could name the source. Theories of imbalance, curses, even possession persisted. But what if it was simpler? What if all of this, the twitching, the forgetfulness, the rage, the confusion, was not divine at all? What if it was plumbing? You remember the pipes in your insula, silver gray, gleaming, efficient. They bring fresh water to your door. They make you modern, refined, Roman. They also leach lead into your every sip. You tried storing water in clay jars, but it tasted odd. And slower, you returned to the pipes. The luxury is hard to quit, like the bath. You've begun noticing your emotions unraveling. Things that once brought joy, a child's laugh, the scent of baking bread, now stir only faint echoes. You cry easily, then laugh without cause, sometimes both in the same breath. Your wife looked at you last night with fear in her eyes, not because of what you said, but because you said it with a smile that didn't reach your eyes. You remember walking through the palestra, the open-air gymnasium, watching men train with wooden swords. Once, you would have joined them, light on your feet, sharp in mind. Now, you stand aside. Your balance is off. Your hands shake. The wooden sword slips from your fingers. A child nearby laughs. You do not. You feel rage rise up like a wave. It passes, but leaves you hollow. Later that day, in the bath, a stranger touches your shoulder, mistaking you for someone else. You recoil, snapping at him. His eyes widen in apology, but you barely hear him. Your heart is pounding, ears ringing. You didn't mean to yell. You didn't mean to scare him, but your nerves are fraying. And worse, you're not sure you care anymore. You wonder if this is what madness feels like. Not a single moment of breaking, but a gradual dimming, a soft rot that eats at the foundation, and no one notices until the structure collapses. Rome is still standing, but for how long? You sit on the edge of the Caldarium pool, legs submerged, eyes distant. Around you, others bathe. They laugh, they gossip, they scratch at their rashes, they cough into towels. No one speaks of the change, because if you admit it, you give it power. You name the ghost, and the ghost begins to haunt. You close your eyes. The steam rises. The warmth wraps around you like a womb. And once again, you let yourself believe, for just a moment, that this is healing you, that you are not slowly unraveling, that Rome is not built on poison. But deep down, you always knew. You've stopped eating lunch. You didn't mean to at first. It simply slipped past you one day, too tired to chew, too nauseated to care. Then it happened again, and again, until the very thought of food in the early afternoon fills you with a quiet dread. Your appetite, once reliable and proud like a Roman legion, has disbanded without ceremony. Your robes, though recently adjusted, now sag at the shoulders. Your belt no longer holds firm around your waist. You've convinced yourself it's the fabric. Maybe the leather's stretched. Maybe the cut is off. But in truth, it's your body thinning. Slowly, inescapably. And yet, you still return to the bathhouse. Because it's what you do. What everyone does. Rome may lose battles. Emperors may fall. Fires may raze entire districts. But the baths remain. To skip them would be to admit something's wrong. And if there's one thing you've learned about being Roman, it's that admitting weakness invites it. Today, the steam feels heavier. Not warmer, heavier, as though it carries weight now. You breathe it in, and your lungs respond with a dry cough, deep and rattling. You pause near a column in the tepidarium, pretending to admire the mosaic of Neptune while you recover. A boy notices. You straighten your back and nod like nothing happened. The boy's eyes are bloodshot. His fingers twitch. He scratches absently at a rash spreading down his forearm. You recognize it? You've seen it on your own skin, and on others. More and more, you're noticing things you shouldn't be seeing. A man whose hands shake so violently, he drops his flask. A woman who smiles at no one and rocks on the bench. a child who no longer speaks, a bather who faints and is carried away by slaves. But no one follows, no one questions. There's a silence in the thermi now, under all the bustle, a collective pact not to notice. The rituals continue. Oil, strigil, soak, cold plunge, dry. But there's no joy anymore, just habit, repetition, as if Rome has programmed itself to disintegrate with dignity. Historians still debate whether the decline of Roman public health can be traced to their infrastructure. The lead pipes, the communal latrines, the obsession with public water. Some say it was the wine, boiled in lead pots to sweeten its flavor. Others point to the makeup of noblewomen, powders thick with mercury and chalk. But few argue against the baths being central to the slow poisoning. You are living proof. Your gums bleed in the mornings now, not dramatically, just enough to taste copper. Your vision blurs when you rise too fast. Your thoughts, once like spear points, now drift like smoke. You mix up names, forget appointments. Sometimes you walk into a room and stop cold, unsure why you're there. You tell yourself it's stress, or age, or heat. But you're 34. You once marched with clarity, debated policy, handled contracts. Now writing a letter feels like climbing a hill barefoot. You begin a sentence and forget how it ends. And yet, back to the baths you go. You try new oils, different sequences. Some say starting with the frigidarium instead of ending there improves digestion. Others swear by sea salt scrubs. A man recommends a poultice of crushed lupins applied to the belly before entering the caldarium. You try it. Nothing helps. Your stomach churns with a dull, constant pressure. Your limbs tingle as though they're falling asleep. Your hair comes out in clumps when you dry off. You tuck the strands into the towel and pretend not to notice. You watch a woman in the corner do the same. No one says anything, because no one wants to be first. To be first is to be marked. You remember your neighbor, Lucius, once the most talkative man in your district. He began skipping baths, said the water made him dizzy. Within weeks, his shop was empty. Rumors swirled. Illness, madness, shame. Then one day, his door was boarded up. No one asked questions. To reject the bath is to reject the order, to reject the empire. And so you comply, even when it hurts, even when you weep in the apoditarium and blame the steam, even when your mind plays tricks on you, like when you saw your reflection yesterday and didn't recognize it. Your jaw has sharpened. Your cheeks are hollow. Your eyes look frightened, not of death, but of forgetting who you were. You meet a friend in the atrium. Or perhaps he was once a friend. He calls you by the wrong name. You laugh politely and correct him. He doesn't flinch, doesn't apologize, just blinks and nods. You realize he doesn't remember the correction 5 minutes later, and you don't blame him, because you've done the same. There is a rot beneath the marble, a sickness in the water. You see it in the plumbing, the sheen of the silver gray pipes. How proud you once were to have them installed in your home. Direct flow from the aqueducts. Modern, efficient, civilized, and slowly, month by month, they've been eroding your body. Your teeth ache. Your tongue has a strange texture now. Your bones pop when you stretch. Your fingers don't close all the way. Still, you go back. You bathe. You drink. You smile. Because not doing so would be more dangerous than the rot itself. To live in Rome is to perform your wellness, even as you wither. Because if you don't, someone else will report you. The city devours the weak with a smile. And you, like everyone else, pretend not to notice. The baths will be full again tomorrow. You will be there because you are Roman. And being Roman means not asking why. You no longer know if the ache in your bones is from age or something else. When you rise in the morning, your knees crack like old timber. Your shoulders feel like they've been wrapped in stone. You stretch, but the stiffness lingers. You walk to the window, watching the first golden rays creep over Rome's tiled rooftops. And for a moment, just a flicker, you wonder if you'll be able to climb the steps to the bathhouse today. Then the thought passes. Because of course you will. You always do. Even now, when each step feels like walking through mud. Even now, when the road feels longer than it used to, and the sun seems harsher, and the breeze doesn't cool you the way it once did. The sandals scrape against your heels. The tunic feels heavy. The city moves around you like a dream you can't quite wake from. You pass a man coughing into a rag. He quickly hides it. Another limps with a twisted gait, his face pale and sunken. A woman stares at a wall, eyes wide, lips moving silently. None of this surprises you anymore, because Rome is rotting, not with flames or war, not yet, but with silence. A slow, invisible corrosion of the mind, the body, the collective sense of what is normal. The city looks the same. The temples stand tall. The aqueducts still carry water. The statues still smile. But the people are unraveling, and no one speaks of it. You reach the thermae. The sounds are familiar, the splash of water, the scrape of strigils, the murmurs of polite conversation. Someone laughs. Someone groans. A slave drops a flask and is scolded. On the surface, everything is as it should be. But if you look closely, really look, you see it. A man sits on the edge of the caldarium, staring into space. His back is arched slightly, hands clasped too tightly in his lap. A woman in the corner twitches, just once, as though a muscle misfired. Two children run by, and one collapses mid-laugh, catching himself just in time, rising with a shaky smile. You know the signs. You feel them. Your body is beginning to betray you. The shakes come more frequently now. Tiny tremors in your hands when you reach for your towel. A brief flicker in your jaw when you chew. Your bladder rebels without warning. Sometimes your legs buckle, just slightly, when you're standing still. But you keep going, because it would be more terrifying to stop. Historians still debate how much of the Roman collapse was internal, physiological, caused not by war or economics, but by something deeper, something creeping. Some suggest a generational weakening of the upper class due to diet and environment. Others say that's nonsense. Rome fell because of politics, corruption, invaders. But you live in the middle of it. And from your vantage point, it doesn't feel like invasion. It feels like poisoning. The lead flows from the fountains, lines the water jars, softens the pipes. The wine, boiled in lead vats, carries its sweetness straight into the blood. The face creams and eyeliner your wife once adored? She stopped using them when her eyelashes began to fall out. But the baths, that's where the real damage lies. The steam opens your pores. The oils seep into your skin. The lead finds its path inward, silent and patient. You remember when the baths were joy, community, the warm embrace of routine. You talked philosophy here, made deals, flirted, laughed, relaxed. But now, the joy is gone. The steam feels oppressive. The conversation falters. The faces around you grow unfamiliar, not because they are new, but because you forget them. Even the smells have changed. The eucalyptus and lavender that once danced through the sudatorium now smell faintly of rust. The oils feel greasy. The towels never seem fully clean. You wonder if it's your senses failing, or if the baths themselves are souring. You see your friend, Publius. He waves, but with a vacant look. You wave back, unsure if he knows who you are. You walk together toward the frigidarium. He speaks of grain prices, then stops mid-sentence, staring at his hand. "I forgot what I was saying," he murmurs, blinking. "It happens," you say gently, and it does. To everyone now, you step into the cold water together. Once, this plunge was invigorating, a shock that reset the day. Now it burns. Your joints cry out. You wade forward anyway, pretending you feel better. Publius rubs his temple, muttering something about dreams. You nod, unsure what to say. He tells you his wife found him walking outside last night, barefoot, mumbling poetry he never learned. You don't ask questions. You simply nod. Because last week, you woke up in the atrium. No memory of getting there. Your hands were wet. Your tongue was sore. You chalked it up to sleepwalking, stress, too much wine. But deep down you knew. The baths haven't cleansed you. They've absorbed you. Each visit strips away another layer, not of dirt, but of certainty. You no longer know where this ends. Will you lose your words, your name? Will you wake up one day unable to recognize your own reflection? Or worse, will you stop caring? Because that, you fear, is the final stage. Not madness, but indifference. And Rome will continue. The forums will still ring with debate. The bread will still be baked. The games will still be played. No one will notice the difference between a vibrant mind and a hollow one, as long as the motions are performed, as long as you keep bathing. So you do. You towel yourself off, slow and methodical. You smile when a boy offers you oil. You joke with a merchant about the weather. You adjust your tunic and nod politely to the guards. And you go home, shaking, exhausted, hollow, but still Roman, still bathing, still pretending. You once believed that knowledge was protection. You had studied the scrolls of Galen and Pliny. You had listened to physicians lecture in shaded courtyards, their voices full of certainty. You learned the proper diets, the humors, the herbs, the balances of bile and blood. You followed the guidance, ate the right fruits, avoided too much honey, drank only aged wine, slept with your feet slightly raised, woke with the sun, and above all, bathed. And yet here you are, unraveling. Your breath shortens after climbing a single flight of stairs. Your fingertips tingle when you reach for anything above your head. You've begun mispronouncing familiar words. You heard yourself say via as vima last night and laughed. But not because it was funny, because it was unreal. Your tongue is not your own anymore. Your physician says it's nerves, or sleep, or heat. He tells you to bathe more often. You thank him and walk home slowly, your head buzzing. You know it's not nerves. You know it's not sleep. It's Rome. Not the idea of Rome, but the physical, poisonous matter of it. The very stone beneath your feet, the water in your cup, the wine in your veins, the oils on your skin. You are surrounded by glory that seeps through your pores like venom disguised as luxury. And you are not alone. Yesterday in the bath, a woman you often recognize, Julia, mother of 3, vibrant and loud, wandered the atrium without a tunic. She simply walked, bare and blinking, as if she'd forgotten she was dressed at all. No one stopped her. One man chuckled, A boy pointed and was hushed, but no one helped. You asked after her later. "She's been odd lately," someone said. Nothing serious, but you saw the look in their eyes. They knew. They all know. Just no one wants to be the first to speak it aloud. Because to admit what's happening is to admit failure, not of an individual, but of a civilization. And Rome does not fail. Rome triumphs. Rome bathes. Still, some whisper. In the tabernae, behind barrels of olive oil and amphorae of fish sauce, traders exchange stories. Senators who can no longer recall their own speeches. Bakers who scream in their sleep. Midwives who forget their way home. Children who can't speak by age 5. They say it's in the wine, someone mutters. "No," says another. "It's the fish from the eastern shores. I heard it's curses from the east." But no one dares whisper what you are now certain of. It's the water, the baths, the daily steam that opens your skin like an invitation to every toxin the empire has to offer. The sacred strigil, scraping oils infused with trace metals directly into your pores. The communal towels, damp and used. The stone benches, damp year-round. The pipes, the vats, the filters clogged with lime and filth. You've tried to resist. Once or twice, you skipped your routine. You told friends you had a fever, that you were waiting for a special oil delivery. You stayed home and bathed in cold water from a clay jar, boiled and cooled. But you felt off. Not physically, socially. Like you'd stepped outside of Rome's rhythm. You were invisible, forgotten. A neighbor walked past without greeting. A client canceled a meeting. A cousin sent word of concern. To opt out of the bath is to opt out of the city, so you returned. Slower, sicker, but compliant. Because Rome is not built on freedom. It is built on performance. You perform wellness to remain within its embrace. And you are not ready to be cast out. You remember a senator who gave up the bath. He was wealthy, influential. He had marble floors in his villa and a private library. One day, he claimed he no longer believed in the ritual, said the steam dulled his senses. The oils made his skin itch. At first, people laughed. Then they stopped inviting him. Then they whispered he'd gone mad. Then they said nothing at all. Last week, you passed his villa. It was empty. No servants, no horses, no laughter. Gone. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps he was mad. Perhaps the two are indistinguishable now. Historians still question whether early Roman physicians ever suspected environmental toxicity. Some note that Egyptian doctors warned of heavy metals, even if they lacked modern terms. Others argue Romans simply lacked the tools. And still others claim denial was easier, because what good is truth if you cannot afford to confront it? You sit now in the caldarium, steam thick like gauze, eyes stinging. Around you, men and women recline, their expressions distant. You wonder how many of them are pretending, how many feel as you do. A boy nearby hums a lullaby off-key. His mother sits next to him, her eyes vacant. You feel a wave of nausea pass through your gut. The oils have made your skin slick. Your breath comes shorter. Still, you smile. Still, you bathe. Because what else is there? You are Roman. And being Roman means enduring the beautiful poison with pride. Your dreams are now filled with water. Not just steam or mist or gentle rivers, but water, vast and dark and endless. You float in it, sometimes weightless, sometimes sinking. Sometimes the bathhouse is there, looming in the distance like a temple-turned mausoleum. Other times, it's gone, and the water stretches past the edge of your mind. You've begun waking in the middle of the night soaked, not in sweat, but in actual water. Twice now, your wife has found you standing in the courtyard fountain, your eyes open, your lips moving in a language neither of you understands. You tell her you were sleepwalking. She doesn't believe you, but she says nothing. No one does anymore. Because this is Rome now. This is what happens to people. You remember when madness was a rarity, something whispered about in corners. The mad were isolated, pitied, perhaps feared, but they were outliers. Now you wonder if the sane are the strange ones, the ones who haven't yet succumbed. You see it in the faces at the forum, the confusion, the tremors, the rage, the forgetfulness, all hidden under the practiced smiles of toga-clad citizens, still trying to be statues while their minds corrode. There was once a philosopher who warned that Rome would die, not with fire, but with forgetting. You think of him often now. The forgetting is everywhere. Last week, a neighbor asked you your name. You've lived next door to him for 15 years. You laughed, thinking it was a joke, but he wasn't joking. He stared at you, blank and blinking, as if your face were a puzzle he could not solve. And when you told him, "It's me, Marcus," he smiled slowly, like someone being reminded of a story he'd never heard. That night, you stood in front of your mirror for hours, just looking. You no longer trust your memory. Your face changes daily, or perhaps your perception of it does. Your skin looks thinner, your eyes glassier, your mouth not quite centered. You touch your cheek, and it feels soft. Too soft. Not alive, but yielding, like wax. You tried to write your will yesterday. You spelled your son's name wrong 3 times. He's only 6. You wept quietly into your sleeve and blamed the heat. Your wife offered you mint tea. You drank it and forgot what you were crying about. The baths are no longer a ritual. They are a dependency. You go not for cleansing, but for continuity. You need the rhythm now, the scrape of the strigil, the burn of the steam, the plunge into cold, as proof that time is still real, that your days are still ordered, that you are still you. But even the baths are changing. The tiles feel softer beneath your feet, as if water has soaked into their bones. The ceiling drips more often. The steam hangs lower. The air is heavier. More people cough. More people mutter. The laughter has thinned. Someone defecated in the apoditirium last week. No one cleaned it. They simply stepped around it, as if this were normal, as if this were inevitable. Historians still dispute the precise moment when Roman hygiene became less about health and more about appearance. At some point, the baths became a theater, an act of civic performance. You bathe not to be well, but to appear well, and now that illusion is crumbling. The sickness has broken through the lacquer of dignity. You saw a young woman today in the sudatorium. Her hair had fallen out in clumps. Her hands trembled. She stared at the wall for nearly an hour. When she finally stood, she left without dressing. No one stopped her. Not because they didn't care, but because they understood. You've started speaking to statues. You told Minerva yesterday that you were afraid. You whispered it like a confession, kneeling in the shade of her marble feet. She offered no reply. Her stone eyes, once so sharp, now seemed dull. You wondered if she had heard the same whispers in the steam, if the gods themselves are sickened by what Rome has become. A man once said, "The gods abandoned Troy not in fire, but in silence." You think Rome's gods are already packing their things. You sit now in the frigidarium, your body shaking. The cold no longer refreshes. It burns. Your muscles refuse to relax. You clench your jaw so hard your teeth ache. Someone speaks to you, but their words melt into nonsense. You smile anyway. You nod. This is what it means to be Roman now, to endure the decay without complaint, to accept madness with manners. You dry yourself slowly, painfully. Your joints crack, your spine pops, your ankles buckle briefly. But you stand. You always stand. Even as your knees quake and your mind drifts. You exit into the sun, squinting, and you realize something. The streets are quieter now. Not empty, just quieter. As if the whole city has begun to speak in whispers. As if Rome itself is afraid. Afraid of what it has become. Afraid of what it can no longer remember. The city smells different now. It's not just the alleys or the markets. Those have always held their own ripe symphonies. But the air itself. There's a metallic tang that sits on your tongue when you breathe deeply. Like the taste of a coin left too long in the sun. You tell yourself it's just the summer. That maybe the aqueducts are overdue for cleaning. That perhaps the breeze is carrying something sour from the Tiber. But you know better. You taste Rome's blood in the air. It's inescapable. The iron, the rot, the residue of civilization too proud to notice its own infection. You walk to the baths more slowly now. It takes longer to prepare. You forget where you placed your sandals. You check your satchel twice, 3 times. Sometimes you leave without it entirely. Other times you catch yourself halfway to the therme before realizing you're still in your night tunic. No one points it out. No one dares. Because they too have walked barefoot into the street. Because forgetting has become routine. You see your reflection in a shop window. There's a bakery across the way, though you rarely buy bread anymore. Not because it's expensive, but because chewing exhausts you. Your reflection startles you. You look melted. Your jaw is softer. Your shoulders slump more than you remember. Your eyes, those once sharp, once curious eyes, look dulled, almost translucent. You press a hand to your chest, just to feel it rise. Still here, still Roman, still walking. You reach the apoditerium, and the act of undressing takes longer than expected. Your fingers fumble the knot at your belt. You stare at it, as if it might untie itself out of sympathy. A slave offers to help, but you wave him off. I can still do this, and you can, eventually. But the moment lingers, heavier than it should. In the caldarium, the heat feels different. Not like warmth, like weight. It presses against your skull, dampens your lungs. You find yourself taking shorter breaths, just to keep from coughing. The man beside you does the same. You exchange no words, just weary glances. Across the room, someone begins to sing softly, a children's lullaby. Their voice cracks halfway through, then stops. No one asks them to continue. You watch the steam rise from your arms. The oils drip slowly from your shoulders, forming tiny rivers down to your fingers. The strigil scrapes over your skin, but there's nothing left to cleanse. You are no longer shedding sweat or dirt. You are shedding yourself, bit by bit, layer by layer. A younger man, no older than 20, sits nearby, twitching slightly at the corner of his mouth. His right eye doesn't close all the way. He stares ahead, murmuring something under his breath. A prayer? A curse? Or just fragments of thought unmoored from language? You don't ask, because you've started doing the same. Your thoughts drift like leaves in a gutter, swirling, colliding, vanishing. You begin sentences aloud and forget the ending. You find yourself in rooms you didn't walk into. You misplace names, then entire faces. You remember a historian once wrote that Rome's strength was in its memory, its ability to record, to catalog, to remember. The annales, the wax tablets, the marble inscriptions. But what if memory itself begins to fail? What if Rome forgets how to be Rome? You step into the frigidarium, hoping the cold will sharpen you, will reset something. It does not. It stings. It jolts your muscles. But your mind remains slow, slurred, like thoughts moving through thick wine. There's a woman humming to herself beside the fountain. You realize she's been humming the same 3 notes for nearly an hour. You realize you didn't notice until now. You close your eyes, and in the darkness behind your lids, you don't see your house. You don't see your wife. You don't see your son. You see the pipes, miles of them, twisting, branching, snaking through the city like veins, lined with lead, carrying Rome's poison from one home to the next. You see them pulse. You see them breathe. You feel them inside you. You open your eyes and gasp. No one notices, because everyone else is gasping too. Historians still argue whether Rome's fall was sudden or slow, whether the city was brought down by sword or by sickness, whether barbarians at the gate mattered more than the rot within. You suspect it was always the latter. You rise, your limbs trembling. You wrap the towel around your waist. The cloth sticks slightly to an open sore on your thigh. You do not flinch. You do not cry out. You walk through the atrium. You pass the fountains. You nod to the statue of Asclepius, the god of medicine, whose face is now stained with mildew and streaked by water. You step into the sunlight, and you feel nothing. Not warmth, not relief, not even fear. Just a dull awareness that you are still moving, still functioning, still participating in the great performance of civilization. Because if you stop, if even one person stops, the illusion cracks. And Rome cannot afford that. Not yet. Not while the baths still operate. Not while the citizens still scrape their skin clean, even as their minds decay. Not while statues still stand. Not while the fountains still run with poison. You try to remember the last time you felt entirely human, not functional, not present, not Roman, just human. You suspect it was years ago, perhaps in spring, when your son was still small enough to ride on your shoulders. He had laughed as you bounced him through the Forum Boreum, his hands sticky from honeyed dates. The sky was sharp blue. The world felt enormous and full of movement, but your mind was still, clear, grounded. You were there. Now, even the memory feels like a borrowed dream. Your son avoids the baths now. He complains that the steam makes his skin crawl, that his stomach knots for hours afterward. Your wife says it's a phase, that boys grow restless. But you see something else in his eyes. He's scared, and perhaps more terrifying still. He's right to be. This morning, he spilled a goblet of milk and began to cry. Not because of the milk, but because he couldn't remember what milk was. He looked at it like it was mercury or blood. His sobs were the sobs of someone realizing they've lost the map, not the destination. You held him until he quieted, then sat in silence for hours afterward. You want to scream, but there's no one left to listen. Your neighbors are silent. Your friends are vacant. Your physician has begun to refer to you by the wrong name. You correct him gently, but he just nods and says, yes, of course. Marcus, you are not Marcus. But you say nothing more. The baths still call, even now, even after everything. Because what else is there? You wake, you bathe, you bleed, you forget. The order doesn't matter anymore. The bathhouse is a mausoleum of movement. People go through motions, but they are hollow. The oil jars are half full. The towels never feel clean. The strigils are more for show than cleansing. And the steam no longer feels like vapor. It feels like a warning. You step into the sudatorium, but instead of relaxing, your skin prickles. Your vision blurs. You hear whispers that aren't there. The hiss of water on hot stone sounds like someone weeping. You sit on the marble bench and close your eyes. And you see them, the builders, the architects, the plumbers who laid the pipes, the physicians who swore the water was sacred, the merchants who shipped amphorae of wine laced with lead syrup, the poets who praised the public baths as Rome's greatest glory. They smile at you, not kindly, but proudly, as if to say, you are us. You did this too. You open your eyes and the room tilts. Not metaphorically. It tilts. You grasp the bench, your fingers leaving wet imprints. You hear your own heart pounding. You try to remember your wife's name. It doesn't come. Only the image of her face. Her eyes tired, her mouth too still. You leave the sudatorium, staggering toward the frigidarium, the cold water now your only anchor. You plunge without hesitation, gasping as your lungs tighten. Your skin erupts in goosebumps. Your limbs rebel. But for a moment the fog lifts. You remember your father's voice. You remember your childhood dog's name. You remember the shape of your first house's roof. Then it's gone. But even that brief flash feels like a miracle. Historians still wrestle with whether Rome truly fell or simply faded, whether the end was marked by fire and pillage or by something more insidious, the slow erasure of memory, of clarity, of connection. You now believe it was the latter. You rise from the water, trembling, shivering, but more awake than you've felt in days. And that, ironically, terrifies you more. Because clarity brings despair. Despair that this is what life has become, that your child is next, that the gods have long abandoned their statues, that your city, your culture, your civilization, so proud of its aqueducts, its marble, its daily rituals, is built upon poisoned water and decaying mines. You dress with difficulty, each movement deliberate, forced. You feel your legs locking, your shoulders stiffening. You glance down and see blood on the edge of your tunic. Nosebleed. Again, you wipe it gently. You walk home, not quickly, not confidently, but with purpose, because something has changed. Not in Rome, in you. There's no more pretending, no more performance. You are sick. Your family is sick. The city is dying by inches, and no one will speak of it. So you will, or try to. Even if the words slip through your fingers like water, even if tomorrow you forget them again, even if no one listens, because someone must mark the moment. Someone must whisper, "We were poisoned, and we called it glory." You write your name on a wax tablet, slowly, carefully, each letter carved with trembling fingers, the stylus nearly slipping. You finish, exhale, and stare at it. Your name, 4 letters, familiar, certain, but already It feels like something you found rather than something you are. The wax softens in the heat. The lines blur. You try again. Each time it grows messier. This is what your life has become. A daily test of recollection. Your name, your age, your child's face, the walk to the baths, the names of herbs, the day of the week. You whisper these facts to yourself as you walk the colonnades, as if reciting a fragile spell that holds your world together. You once carried books. Now you carry reminders. But even reminders don't help when your senses betray you. Food no longer tastes right. Wine burns your tongue. Familiar textures, linen, marble, clay, now feel foreign. One morning, you picked up a plum and dropped it, screaming, convinced it was a small animal. You laugh about it now, but the memory isn't funny, because the fear was real, because the plum was not a plum, because for that moment, the world had shifted. You still bathe. You must. But you enter the thermae like a man entering a tomb. The apoditarium is darker than usual. Fewer lamps, fewer attendants. The slave seems slower. One scratches his chest raw and doesn't seem to notice. Another laughs under his breath constantly, a high-pitched wheeze like air escaping a dying animal. You see people you've known for years and now don't recognize. Some greet you with two wide smiles. Others don't acknowledge you at all. The benches are wet, not from fresh water, but from dripping bodies that no longer dry. You sit slowly, wincing at the ache in your knees. A small pool of oil surrounds your feet. You don't know if it's from you or someone else. You whisper the 4 letters of your name again, just to be sure. You enter the caldarium, and the heat is suffocating. The steam doesn't cleanse. It presses, smothers. You close your eyes and imagine you're in a cave, a place where people came to forget, to dissolve, to be purified by heat and ignorance. But this isn't purification. This is embalming. You hear a scream from the other room. It rises, cuts off, returns as laughter. No one moves. No one ever moves anymore. Historians often romanticize Roman engineering, especially the baths, the domes, the underfloor heating, the fountains. The system of fire and water, managed with such precision, but what they never mention is the weight of it, the obligation, the devotion required to maintain the illusion that all is well. Because to stop bathing is to admit the system has failed, and Rome cannot admit failure. You step into the frigidarium, and something is wrong. The water is black, not truly black, but murky, oily, clouded. You step back. A boy stands waist deep in the middle, eyes open, unmoving. You watch him for a long moment. He doesn't blink. You turn away, heart thudding. You do not ask questions. You do not call for help. You towel off in silence, avoiding the gazes of the others. You dress as quickly as your hands allow, though your belt tangles and your tunic catches. You no longer care if it's crooked. You no longer care if anyone sees you struggle. Because you've begun to accept something. This city is haunted. Not by ghosts, by the living, by minds unraveling in unison, by rituals continued out of fear, not faith. You pass the statue of Hygeia on your way out, the goddess of cleanliness. Her arm is chipped now. The birds have nested in her hair. Her water basin is empty. You whisper a prayer, not to be healed, but to be remembered, even if only for a little while longer. You reach home. You forget how to unlock the door. You stand there, breathing, hand on the latch, waiting for the answer to float up from the deep. Eventually, it does. You enter. Your wife is in the atrium, staring into the distance. You kiss her on the head. She doesn't look up. You sit beside her in silence, and you realize this is your life now. This silence, this ritual, this slow disintegration masked by order, by ceremony, by stone walls and marble columns and steaming water. You're not angry. You're not afraid. You're only tired. So you rest, and when you wake, you'll bathe again. Because that's what Romans do. The city is quieter than usual, not silent. Rome never truly sleeps. But this is a different quiet, one that hums below the cobblestones, one that hangs between archways and under eaves. You feel it not just in your ears, but in your bones. It's the kind of quiet that comes after forgetting, not before it. You wake before dawn, not because you mean to, but because your body no longer distinguishes night from day. Sleep comes in fragments. Memory does too. You lie still, eyes open in the dark, waiting for your name to return. It does eventually, but it takes longer than it should. You sit up, your joints ache, your spine complains. There's a throb behind your eyes that hasn't left in weeks. You rise slowly, each movement measured, deliberate, like someone learning their limbs for the first time. Your wife stirs beside you, but says nothing. The warmth between you is faint now, not unfriendly, just dulled, like a fire that hasn't gone out, but has stopped trying to reach anyone. You dress. Your fingers fumble with the belt. You don't ask for help, because there's no one to help anymore, because no one trusts their hands either. On the way to the baths, you pass a beggar who once played the flute near the forum. Now he mutters softly to his blanket. You offer him a coin, but he stares through you. You leave the coin anyway. You turn down the alley that leads to the therme. It smells of old oil and wilted herbs. The walls are streaked with mildew. The marble is chipped in places you hadn't noticed before. There is no cue, no conversation, no ritual greetings, only footsteps echoing across stone. You enter the apoditerium. The benches are mostly empty. A pair of sandals lie abandoned under a shelf, their leather warped with time. You undress and fold your tunic. Your arms look thinner now. Your skin sags around your elbows. Your breath fogs in the stale air. You whisper your name under your breath. It sticks this time. Barely. The caldarium is already thick with steam. Too thick. The heat clings to your skin like a fever, not like comfort. You sit on the stone ledge and close your eyes. For a moment, you drift. When you open them, the man beside you has a nosebleed. He doesn't notice. You don't tell him, because you're not sure it matters anymore. A woman across from you has wrapped herself in towels and is humming a tune. Off-key, repetitive, childlike. No one asks her to stop. The dome ceiling drips slowly. One drop hits your shoulder. It feels like blood. You move on to the sudatorium. The smoke from the brazier stings your eyes. Someone coughs so hard it echoes. You don't turn to look. You fear the face will look like yours. You fear it will look worse. Historians still argue whether Roman society decayed from within or was undone by external invasions. But here, in this moment, you no longer care about arguments. You only know that you are here and that something has long since broken. In the frigidarium, the water is still. You hesitate at the edge. You remember the first time you came here, as a boy. The cold had shocked you. You had screamed and laughed. Your father had dunked you under and called you a little senator. You had believed him. Now you step in alone. The cold no longer wakes you. It numbs you. You submerge, not to refresh, to forget. And for a brief, terrible moment, it works. You forget your son's name, your wife's voice, the taste of olives, the weight of language. You surface, gasping. The water feels thicker than before, oily, still and deep, like the thoughts that no longer form clearly in your skull. You push yourself out, hands shaking. You dry off slowly. The towel is damp before it touches you. You dress. One sandal breaks. You carry it in your hand. You do not speak. No one does. You step outside. Rome greets you not with bustle, but with rustle. Leaves drift. A dog limps past you, its ribs showing. You walk home through alleys you used to know. The graffiti on the wall reads like a prayer to forgotten gods. You do not go inside. Not yet. Instead, you stand in the shadow of your own door, watching the sun climb, casting long shadows across a city too proud to whisper that it is dying. And finally, you understand. You were not just bathing in water. You were bathing in poison, in forgetting, in performance. The baths were not for cleansing. They were for erasing. One layer at a time, the steam has long since faded. The scent of oil, of stone, of old water still clings faintly to your skin, but it no longer feels invasive. You walk, not quickly, not slowly, just with the kind of steady rhythm that comes when the urgency has slipped away. Behind you, the domes of the baths begin to shrink into the skyline, their proud marble shoulders softened by distance and morning haze. You don't look back. There's nothing there for you anymore. Not the purity once promised, not the fellowship, not the order. What was sacred has become hollow. What was ritual has become repetition. And in your chest, for the first time in years, there's a strange and unfamiliar quiet. Not fear, not even peace, just release. The city unfolds ahead of you like a scroll waiting to be read. The cobblestones no longer bite. The buildings no longer loom. Even the voices of merchants seem less shrill, as if someone turned down the volume on the world. A dog barks, but it sounds more like a laugh than a threat. You smile. There is time now, to walk without purpose, to breathe without flinching, to exist without defending. You take a side street you haven't walked since you were a boy. The fig trees along the wall are taller now, their branches curling above like a canopy. A soft breeze passes through, stirring the leaves, casting dancing shadows onto the path below. You pause and let them fall across your skin. They feel real. Everything does. You reach the courtyard of your home. The stones are warm from the sun. You sit on the low step, just beneath the lintel, and rest your arms on your knees. You do not rush inside. There's no need. There's no checklist to complete. No bath to catch. No status to uphold. Only breath. Only presence. The neighbor's cat slinks past you. Its tail brushes against your ankle. You don't flinch. You don't even reach for it. You just watch it move, fluid, unbothered, whole. Your wife calls softly from within the house. You hear her, clearly this time. Her voice no longer echoes through the fog. It comes to you like a thread, fine, golden, steady. You take it. You answer. She steps into view. Her hair is loose. Her eyes meet yours. For a long moment, nothing is said. Nothing needs to be. You reach for her hand. She doesn't hesitate. You don't ask her how she's been sleeping. You don't mention the baths. You just sit, fingers laced, hearts beating in time. The sky above is pale blue. No clouds, no omens, just open space. The breeze returns. It smells faintly of ash and rosemary. It pulls at your tunic and then moves on, Not quite a warning, not quite a goodbye. You are still here. You are still you, even with the forgetting, even with the unraveling, because something in you held on. You shift your weight, lean your head back against the doorway, and close your eyes, not to shut out the world, but to let it settle, to give it space, to feel it return, not as pressure, but as rhythm. Inhale, exhale, inhale again. The bathwater is gone. The steam has lifted. The memory lingers, but the grip has loosened. You are not clean, but you are clearer, not cured, but present. And maybe, just maybe, that is enough. Let your shoulders sink. Let your chest rise and fall like waves on a quiet sea. Let your name return, not as a sound, but as a feeling. Let this day be yours again, even if only for a moment. Sleep now, if you wish, or sit quietly a while longer. Either way, the world will wait, and so will I.